Hey everyone, welcome back to Cohesia Connect and Conversations. And I'm pleased to be here with one of our guests, Jennie. And she'll be here talking to us about her experiences within the D&I space, but also bringing to light some lived experiences as well. So thank you, Jennie, for joining us. Welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Well, before we get into the questions and everything like that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Let the audience know what you're up to and what you do.
Yes, so my name's Jennie Fawn. I'm an employment advisor with quite a large disability charity. I've done that job for probably in and out 15, 16 years now, so I've got a lot of experience in that, from charity to providers to the DWP. So I've got a lot of experience having done that with disabilities, and I also bring to that a lived experience of a disability myself. So I have spina bifida, and that has led me to have below knee amputation. So I come to this helping people find work from a position where I've come up against some of the barriers that you find with disabilities as well.
Thank you for that introduction. And I think one thing that is an ongoing conversation now, especially within the workplace, is becoming more aware of people that live with disabilities and the challenges and barriers that they come up against. And I guess my first question would really want to get into the terminology of disability. Is the term still fit for purpose, and are we still okay to use that term, or are there other terms that are deemed more appropriate?
I think from my point of view and from the things I hear other people with disabilities say, so disability isn't a bad word. It's something that can be owned, but it's a way that it's kind of given. So am I a person with a disability, or am I a disabled person? So for me, I'm a person first before I'm the disability. And I think that's where people kind of get themselves a bit tied up in a knot, because people come to disability and they see disability first, when actually we're all just people. We all have different life experiences. I always say to my customers that your normal is normal, and that is for each one of us, whether we have a disability or not. It's a daft word, normal, in a way, because we all have our own experience of what that means. And to me, walking with a prosthetic limb, sometimes using a wheelchair, that is normal. That's what I've always had. It's what I've always experienced. When I need to use my chair, I find that much easier, and actually that means I can still do my everyday life with that aid. It helps me, and what does actually disable me is when I can't get about in the world. So it's not me that's disabled, it's the world around me that makes it difficult for me.
That's a really good point, and I follow someone on social media, and I had the privilege of engaging and working with him, and he said he has the phrase, "I'm disabled by society." I am not disabled, but society disables me. And I think that's such a powerful statement in really addressing the root of the problem. It's not the person, but it's the societal perceptions, it's the societal barriers, and that come up, that people come up against. So I guess in regards to that, how do we then deconstruct it, these perceptions of people living with disabilities and people being disabled by society? How can we destruct that in a more practical and pragmatic way for workplaces?
So I think for workplaces, it's thinking about things that will help us with, if we have a disability, if we have practices that we put in place. If you put something in place for, say, an interview process for somebody that's on the autistic spectrum, maybe they couldn't do with having interview questions beforehand. We'll give everybody the interview questions, and then it's not different for them. Are you adapting your workplace so that it's accessible for a wheelchair user? That actually means that your older workforce, there'll be people that are older, especially as pension age gets higher, that have got disabilities that they don't necessarily label as disability. They just think they're getting a bit older, but actually those things, they're not to put a level access in or a lift that you're maintaining well. Those kind of things help everybody. It's the person that's maybe just sprained their wrist or their ankle, or just the general kind of things that people have that come and go. It's not just the person with the disability, it's your whole workforce. It's that flexible approach that will help not just a person with a disability, help mums with your children, people caring for elderly relatives. There's lots of things that making your workplace more accessible benefits your company, and then from that you get a better workforce because they are happier and they want to stay with you, and you don't have to keep recruiting and
Yeah.
training.
That is so true, and I think now across the board, especially with D&I and the different protected characteristics, there are thousands and bits of research that proves a diverse workforce is a more productive, it's more profitable, and therefore we should really take a standpoint on that. But I'm just going to go back in terms of accessibility, because I know there are a lot of organizations that want to do the right thing, but they have no idea how. So, in terms of accessibility, how would you perceive someone living with a disability asks for that, or how do we come up? I guess my question is, how do we get over that barrier and into the spectrum of the workforce, really providing that solution or that support?
So I think that a lot of my customers do worry when they're applying for jobs. At what point do they explain to the employer that they might need some help? So I think if they're upfront and asking and making sure that their applicants know that, like, we want to know what you need, and so that you break down that barrier, that it's not something that you worry about. I always try and build my customers' confidence so that they've got a nice little statement that they can say about their condition. They don't have to be giving too much information away. That's the thing with disability. You don't have to give everybody your medical history just to get a little bit of help getting into work. But if you can just build yourself a little statement that you could use. I've got this condition. If you do this for me, I'll be a really good member of staff. And it's as simple as that. And it's employers giving that open for that prior to an interview. Even, if you're wanting to be upfront with that on the application form, there's lots of organisations around that can do assessments for your business to see where you can make adjustments, where you can make things more accessible for people with disabilities, and they'll come in and look at your policies and give you advice on your systems where it could be more accessible for somebody maybe with a visual impairment or that needs adapted software.
That's a really good point, and I think thinking ahead and having those measures in place beforehand. So whether it's, I know I've seen some organizations do it quite well, where they say quite upfront, if you tell us what you have, or if you declare that you're a person with a disability, here is how we can help, and here is the reasonable adjustments that we can then provide. And I know during my time in recruitment, we have provided interview questions, and one thing that we did do is not just do it for that person, but we actually did it for everyone that we were interviewing, and that way it shows that equity and across the board, and give everyone a fair chance to get beyond that barrier of the recruitment stage, because I think that's the sticking point, and that's the point where a lot of great diverse talent do fall off, is that initial stage. So how do we break that and let them through and allow them to show us their capabilities? So I guess in terms of that, then, if we can kind of look back at how disability has become more of a topic over the years, what trend has have you seen over the last 5, 10 years, and what do you see going forward? And is there anything that we can perhaps do more?
I think that there has definitely been more of a positive shift within employers considering disability. I think that they are more open to what they can do to change and help. I think there's still a long way to go. I think that about that empowering people to be looking for what they can do, as well as being able to um, know where things are. So it's a case of for employers, are they looking in the right places for people that have disabilities? Are there certain job boards that will specifically be saying this, look, we are going to let you have disabled candidates, this is where we'll go for them, so you could advertise your jobs on them kind of platforms. For obviously people with disabilities, then that's the place that you can be going and looking for them, as well as the mainstream things. There's the disability confident labels that you can get through the DWP, where you sign up for them and then they will help you, take you through an assessment to see how your business is, and you work up to the leader role on that. So there's different things, and then other people that are looking for jobs will know that you are a disability confident employer. So that's a way for, I always think of that as well, not just for people with disabilities, but if you see that they've got that, there's other things as well, like the Stonewall and different tags that you can get to not just have as a tag, but to actually prove to your staff, your new staff, potential staff, that you are committed to equality in all levels and you are going to go through these steps, and be open for that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, no, certainly. I think, as you said, it has evolved over time and it's becoming more of a discussion. I know previously, when we think of DNI, we think of race, gender, and it kind of stopped there for a while, and we became a little bit stagnant. But I think now we are very much more open-minded to the different aspects and the different challenges and barriers people are faced with nowadays, and even historically, and how that has impacted them, and that impact now reigns through to where we are today. But I think what I'm curious, and I don't know if this is a cheeky question, but measures and I guess you call them tags, such as the ones from Stonewall and Disability Confident, do you think, are they truly fit for purpose? Do they truly help and benefit those that live with disabilities?
So I think that can depend on the individual employer, but I think that
Mm-hmm.
they're coming a long way from where they were. The
Mm-hmm.
disability confidence scheme was a two-tick scheme beforehand, and a company just applied for that and they just had it. Whereas the disability confidence thing, they have to reapply every 3 years, and they have to
Mm-hmm.
do the assessments, and they have to keep proving that they are doing those steps. So I think that it's getting better. There is still a long way to go, because can currently sit at the bottom level and keep reapplying for that bottom level. There's no demand to push you through the levels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there is work to do. I'm not denying that. But I think that we are going the right way, but there's lots more that can be done. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that it's just, and I also feel that like with from the company, the organisation I work for at the moment, we're doing a lot of work around the intersection of those
Yes.
different criteria. We're not just people with disabilities. We
Mm-hmm.
don't just have a race. We don't just have a gender. We could be all those things together. And, and I think that that's one of the things for disabilities specifically that gets forgotten. You know, that we get that you're a person with a disability. You might just be a disabled person, and they stick you in the corner, and you've not got a life. You don't have a family. you don't have career progression and choices, and that's absolutely not true. We are such complex people, all of us, whatever our disability, race, gender, and we just have to kind of be there for each other to help each
Mm,
other to kind of connect with those, and
yeah,
yeah, and identify that might bring extra barriers to get over, and how do
yeah,
we lose those barriers?
yes. And you hit the nail on the head, because intersectionality is something that I think is one of the key trends and the key things that D&I, the trends in D&I have shown, that we need to think about the intersectional approach when we are looking at D&I. So whether that's looking from a person who lives with disability, like you rightly said, they do have a family, they do have a life, they do have a particular background and careers that they want to achieve. So I think you are right in bringing that to the forefront, and it's just not someone that has a disability, but it's more than that. We are all human, and we all have our unique identities,
Mhm.
apart from the ones that are labeled onto us by society, essentially. And I guess my second question, well, my follow-up question from the disability confident scheme is, what more, or what do you think is missing, or what do you think can help us fill, not fill the gap, but yeah, I would say fill the gap in regards to fueling more progress in the space of disability?
That's a good question. I think that what we don't do very well is kind of like shout about it. So they don't celebrate it in a good enough way, really, to say, look, this is what we're proud to do this for our staff, and this is what we're getting back. I know of just one example of an organisation that took some staff that were through a scheme that was offering help with disabilities, and that company came back to us and said, "Give us more of this person. Give us 5 more people." Um, because actually their skills that they've brought, their dedication, their commitment, we can always ring this person and say, please come in, we're struggling. And that the positives of these adaptions of putting things in place for people with disabilities is that you get a really loyal and a really committed workforce, um, and a good place to work as well. And I think that we don't celebrate any of that. The organisation I now work for um, do great adaptions for their staff. Brilliant that they asked straight away when I started first day, what adaptions can we do for you? Um, that was like the second time they'd asked, because obviously as I was doing the onboarding, they'd asked as well. And without me having to say, they came and approached me and said, look, we recognise that with a disability, you're going to need some extra time. So we do disability leave on top of your annual leave. And it's just things like that. I thought that was worth its weight in gold, personally. Having, for the rest of my years that I've worked, had to just juggle appointments with oil
Yeah.
or annual leave, that has just been
Mm,
brilliant. And something just as simple as that, it is something that is brilliant, and it will
mm.
make me want to stay there longer.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. I haven't, I don't think I've been in an organization where I've seen that publicized, that there is the disability leave, because yes, you do have appointments. I know a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, he is a wheelchair user, and just recently he had to go get a new wheelchair, and it's not your typical doctor's appointment, but it's still an appointment that's accommodating your needs, and something that you just can't take out of your annual leave, because it's technically an important appointment, or else you wouldn't be able to move without your wheelchair. So I think that's really, really pivotal. And I think things like that, as you said, those little details, those little considerations really help to take it a long way and build that loyal workforce. Um, and we talked a lot about the workforce, but I want to flip it a little bit and talk a little bit about the education system and um, how can we do more? I know for young people who have disabilities, specifically hidden disabilities, they don't tend to find out later on. For instance, I have a good friend who has ADHD, and she didn't get diagnosed until just recently.
Uh-huh.
So how what are your thoughts or ideas around why it's still a little bit of a taboo when we think about the younger generation?
I am really quite passionate about education and about getting the right support. So just to give you a little bit of background, so my history was because I'm an old lady now. When I went to school, my primary school was in a special needs setting. I hate the term special school. It's just like, I just really dislike it. I think we should really come up with something different for it. But primary school in that kind of special needs setting, secondary school in the 80s as just a regular, taken out of the special needs setting and chucked in to mainstream with nobody else that had a disability. And the impact of that was just massive. I loved school in primary school because we didn't really do a lot. If the sun shone, we went to the park because we were special.
Love that.
But then I started the secondary school and was like, oh crumbs, I can't spell. I have
I
no
spent too much
idea.
time in the sun.
Yeah. And I can remember like my first PE lesson being that I didn't have the right footwear because I didn't have, it was before I had my leg amputated and I wore a caliper, and they wouldn't let me in the school gym with my caliper, and I didn't have any shoes that I could wear, so they sat me in the gym office and told me to write down the rules for netball. I'd been in a special school doing wheelchair basketball and wheelchair
Yeah.
dancing. I hadn't been in a school that did netball. I didn't even really understand what it was. I can remember that lesson was just like, I was just sat crying, and because there's nobody kind of taking that. This is the need, the
Mm,
support. This is what you're going to have.
mm,
We've come a long way from that. There's a lot more support in schools than there was then.
mm,
However, in previous jobs I've done, when I've been in touch with families, they're still coming across that limits to where like their budgets are stretched and they're not getting the needs met. They're not able to manage the health condition. The child isn't being given that autonomy to own their own condition, and it impacts mainly, I think personally, from going through it, it impacts your social setting in school. And if your social setting
mm,
isn't there, you can't
yeah,
learn because you don't get past that kind of, I'm struggling
yeah,
to get in the building, and I'm struggling to toilet myself, and all that kind of thing. So
yeah,
it's really really upsetting that in this day and age we are still um, failing our young ones. I see customers now that are coming to me, especially a lot of women. Let's say early, late 30s, late 20s, early 30s, that have just found out that they've got an autism diagnosis, because as women we mask things like that and it doesn't get diagnosed, and they've struggled on through school and uni and got to these levels that you just think, how amazing are you as people to have got to this level with no support at all. And it's when they've come to the workplace that they're thinking, and they've got that diagnosis, and they're like, oh, everything's fallen into place now, I can
yeah.
understand.
It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that from that education point, we do somehow need to be doing something more to discuss disability in the education setting with the kids, as well as like not just teachers understanding it, but it being shared. I've seen settings when I've actually done it myself in some of my roles, where I've been in and done an assembly and we've talked about a condition. neurodiversity week or something like that, and the kids come up with the best questions, and it's just normal to them to ask questions. They're not asking it for to be rude or to say the wrong thing. They just want to know, and it's the best way to learn. And from those questions, then you can start seeing that there are differences, and that's okay. And then you can start putting things in to help where those gaps are.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think they're just curious at the end of the day, and because no one has ever told them, even in family settings, it's not really discussed. No one has ever told them that everyone is different, and you always get told that you're different, but not everyone else is different at the same time. And I think there is that education piece with them, and really highlighting the importance that you may come across someone who is neurodiverse, who is in a wheelchair, or who perhaps doesn't understand things as best as you can. And it's okay to provide support and lend a helping hand when you see someone struggling. Just like when you see someone fall on the playground, you go to help and support them in the same way. So I think that's really valid in highlighting and bringing that issue to the forefront for our young people in order for them to be supported. And you rightly said, women have a bad habit of hiding these things.
Yeah.
And I reflect upon my own experience. I haven't been diagnosed with dyslexia or ADHD or anything like that, but sometimes I do catch myself. And there is we had an education webinar recently at work, whereby um, whereby we were talking about neurodiversity, and something they said in regards to different people experiences. And I said to myself, well, maybe I struggle with that same issue as well, but I never actually went to get help for it. So in my head, I'm just thinking now, like, is it because I didn't want to say, or I didn't want to perceive myself
Yeah.
to be different? I can just get on with it, and I'll find tools myself that will help, but without allowing other people to come in and help. And so I've reflected on my own experience, and I said to myself, okay, maybe it's not, it doesn't stop me from going to a doctor and speaking to see if there's anything that perhaps can help me a lot better, especially now that I'm older. And I feel like if I perhaps had that when I was younger, I would have probably noticed quicker, or I would have probably been in a situation where, okay, these are the methods I need in place from my employers or from friends and family that can really support. So I think that's such a valid point, and an important one too for young people. And even reflecting on my uni days, which weren't that long ago, um, I don't recall there being much support that was available, not just to me, but for the cohort that I was in. So I think that's such an important part. So I guess my final question would be, what message would you leave to people in general, those that live with disabilities, those that don't, employers, educators, the government, perhaps, if we can challenge them. What's one message that you think would allow us to really reflect and really allow us to move past and progress some of these barriers?
I think to people that are maybe here thinking about how the disability is affecting them and is it holding them back, is to be yourself, because we have all got our own unique skills to bring, and actually the things that you learn from your disability are things that nobody else can learn. So they give you that compassionate understanding of what people go through, and like everybody can look around the world and know we need that compassion, and to celebrate it, celebrate your different, because it is it's a gift. It really is. I would never have told my high school self would not have said this, but I would not have swapped my disability for the view on what the world it gives me, and for the for the experiences I've had and the way I've been able to help other people. So I would say to someone, like, celebrate your disability, celebrate the things that make you you, and try and kind of lean into that and find out where that might take you within your career or within your, like, your life, your loves and things that you want to do, and use it as a tool to boost you and not just limit you, because that's what the world around us wants to do. It wants to limit us, but we don't need to be limited. We can just go out and be the best that we can be.
I couldn't have said it any better. Honestly, you've hit the nail on the head. And I think now more than ever, we want to embrace who we are. We want to embrace that we're different. And I think when we look at all the different intersectionalities and however you decide to identify yourself, go for it, embrace it, celebrate it. We were at a Women's Day event, my co-founder and I, and one of the things is one of the speakers said is to celebrate all of your achievements, all of who you are, because at the end of the day, it's you that will kind of initiate that progress, and that will then be able to help others to see their unique abilities to then celebrate with them. So thank you so much for bringing this invaluable discussion to the forefront, and being a little bit honest and transparent about your own experiences as well. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me come on and chat with you. It's been a privilege.